Okay, it is now my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Stan Phelps. Stan is a TEDx speaker, Forbes contributor, and IBM futurist. He's the founder of purplegoldfish.com, a think tank that inspires leaders to think differently about their most important stakeholders, their employees and customers. Before founding purplegoldfish.com, Stan held leadership positions at IMG, Adidas, the PGA of America, and Synergy. He is also the Amazon bestselling author of The Purple Goldfish, as well as 4 other books. Stan teaches in the Rutgers Mini MBA Driving Innovative Business Solutions program. He always receives stellar feedback from participants, and we're confident that you too will enjoy learning from Stan. And with that, I'm going to hand things off to you. Thanks, Stan.
Awesome. Thank you. And I appreciate everyone taking time out of their schedule to be part of today. I've written 10 different colors in the Goldfish series. I think as it relates to innovation and standing out in business, that the pink goldfish is by far probably the best. So looking forward to be able to share that with you today. Pink is all about differentiation and standing out, being innovative. So instead of just telling you what a pink goldfish is straight away, I want to give you an example of a company that I think epitomizes the pink goldfish philosophy. And I want you to imagine for just a minute that you have to be a marketer for this product. And we're talking about cough syrup, right? Think about cough syrup. What's the major flaw of cough syrup? And it's simply the taste, right? It tastes horrible. No one in the history of time has ever drank something in their life and said, ooh, this tastes so good. It tastes like cough syrup. Those words have never been echoed. So what do most companies do when they try to be innovative and try to be different when it comes to marketing cough syrup? Well, some might say, well, we're going to come up with different flavors of cough syrup to mask that horrible taste. Others might focus on the efficacy and say maybe ours doesn't taste as bad as the competition. But there's one cough syrup company that decided to do something a little bit differently. And this is a cough syrup company that's been around for almost 100 years. It's from Canada. It's called Buckley's Cough Syrup. And believe me, if you've ever tried Buckley's in the past, right now you're just having this cringe-worthy moment because Buckley's by far tastes horrible. I mean, think about the worst thing that you've ever tasted and like triple that. That was the biggest flaw for Buckley's. And instead of trying to hide that flaw and that imperfection, a number of years ago, Buckley's decided to lean into that bad taste, knowing that they're not generally for everyone. And in their marketing, if you can imagine this, they compared Buckley's cough syrup to sweaty gym socks, to trash bag leakage in a taste test. And I'm not sure what this is, but it says public restroom puddle. And I just want you to focus on the look on his face when he tries this.
I can't tell. Must be made by the same people.
Now here's the thing. Buckley's tastes awful and it works, right? People swear by it and at it. And so they leaned into actually their biggest flaw. And instead of trying to conceal it, they actually brought it to life. Now that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, did it actually move the needle? So to put it in perspective, before they did this campaign, Buckley's had just 2% of the market share in Canada. And they had already been around for decades. After they launched this campaign, leaning into what made them unique and different, they shot up within a year to be 11% of the market. Now, I'm no math whiz, but in Canada, they tend to call this a hockey stick. This is a 550% increase. By leaning into what made them different, they were able to innovate and drive their business forward. Now, here's the thing. You didn't go on and I appreciate you dedicating an hour. You didn't come here today without realizing that differentiation is at the heart of being innovative. In fact, Youngmi Moon, who's a Harvard Business School professor, she's written a tremendous book called Different. And I love this. She calls out, she says, even though we know it's important to stand out and be different, she says the number that are truly able to achieve competitive separation, she says, is depressingly small. And the research shows that that number is very small. In fact, there's only about 3% of people, the research shows, have the ability to think differently and then to be able to act differently. So here's the question: where are the other 97%? Well, where I think the other 97% are, they're stuck right here in the box. And when I mean the box, it's not a bad thing. That box and the 97% are constrained by the norms of the industry that they're in. Quote unquote, what is considered normal, ethical, social, moral, environmental, legal, and they're constrained by those norms that they can't expand that box and be able to think and act differently. So what I think the 3% are able to do, and I want to share with you today, is that they actually have the ability to expand this box. Now, Pink Goldfish is a business book, and I think by law, you cannot write a business book without having a good 2x2 matrix. So let me break down our matrix. On the vertical, at the bottom, you have what everyone else considers as normal. And then at the top, you have what makes you weird, unique, or different. What makes you imperfect or not normal. And then on the horizontal, you can either decide to, lean in and do more of what makes you weird and normal, or you can decide to push back and do less. So we've got 4 boxes here. Each of these boxes are a different quadrant, and believe it or not, a different animal, no fish. So let me break down each of the 4. And we're going to start with the first quadrant. This is the idea of doing less of what makes you weird, unique, or different. And we call this the cow or the conform quadrant. Now type this in the chat for me. Let's see how everybody does here. Are cows unique? Yes or no? Type it in the chat. I want to see the feedback here. Do you think cows are unique? Yes or no? All right, Tom, Lynn. All right, I got a couple yeses, couple no's. All right, it's about 50-50. Okay, now I'm seeing, ooh, Shari is on it. We're going to stop there. She says, yes, they're unique because of what? Their patterns. Their spots are like our fingerprints, right? No 2 cows are alike. But here's the thing. Do cows know that they're unique? And that's where I think a lot of you are right. They have no clue that they're unique, right? They're oblivious to the fact of what makes them different from everyone else. In fact, one cow could walk here, and what would all of the rest of the cows do? They would follow literally right behind and make a cow path. All right, so half of you did well on the uniqueness there. So we call this the Conform Quadrant. This is not recognizing what makes you unique or different. The opposite of that is the second quadrant. This is the idea of leaning in and doing more, right? And it's doing more of what made you unique. Buckley's is a great example of that. We call this the peacock or the strut quadrant. Now we're going to ask the same question again. Are peacocks unique? Let's see. Let's see in the chat. I'm going to assume that we're going to get most of one answer. Are peacocks unique? All right, Tom's bucking the trend. He says no, but I'm seeing a lot of yeses there. All right, yes. The answer is yes, because the feathers of a peacock are exactly like the spots of a cow or our fingerprints. These patterns mean that no two peacocks are alike. But what's the difference? And it's why we call it the strut quadrant, because peacocks are like, whoa, check me out. They're not afraid, right? They're not afraid to be able to kind of put it out there for everyone to see, right? They own what makes them unique and different. And again, they're not afraid to put it out there. The third quadrant, and again, this is where 97% of people are stuck, is that they decide to do more of what everyone else considers as normal. Now we call this the zebra or the match quadrant. And let me spend a second on this. Look, we all have good intentions, but one of the worst things that we do in business is we start to benchmark, right, the competition. And whether we like to admit it or not, we start to emulate a lot of the things that the leaders do within our industry. And that doesn't lead to different, that leads to sameness. Now, here's the question for this quadrant. And type this in the chat. Let's see who gets this right. Are zebras black with white stripes, or are they white with black stripes? Let's see who watches the Discovery Channel. Let's see here. Are they black with white stripes or white with black stripes? All right, I'm seeing a little bit of back and forth. Hal says both are true. White with black stripe. White. All right, I'm seeing a lot of white with black. Unfortunately, zebras are black with white stripes. And are zebras unique? You don't even have to answer this, because their stripes are exactly like the feathers of a peacock and the spots of a cow, right? No two zebras are alike. But here's the thing, has anyone ever been able to tell one zebra from another zebra? It's almost impossible. In fact, even if you added stripes to a zebra, it would be hard for them to be able to stand out. Now, here's a really interesting piece of trivia. Zebras will gather in groups of 4 to 5 for a very particular reason. It's a prey defense, meaning that when a lion sees 4 or 5 zebras standing together, they don't see 4 or 5 zebras. They see one really big zebra and they don't attack. All right. Fourth quadrant, bottom left. This is the idea of purposefully doing less of what everyone else does as normal. And we call this the polar bear or the subtract quadrant. All right, last piece of trivia here. And this, let's see who really watches Nat Geo. What color are polar bears? What color are polar bears? Let's see how we do. All right. Tom, I think that might be your first correct one. Yes, they are black. Polar bears are black. But here's the thing. The reason why we see them as white, and who put that in there? Daniel put that in there. Their fur is hollow, which means it's translucent, meaning that light passes through their fur. And as it passes through, literally each color within the spectrum gets removed. And what gets bounced back to us is kind of the absence of color, which our eye recognizes as white, or as somebody app said, like a yellowish, like off-white. So here's the thing about polar bears, which I love. They're pretty much solitary creatures. They're not afraid to go off from the herd, to go out on their own. All polar bears are left-handed. And last piece of trivia, they're the only animal on Earth that actively hunts human beings. Yet they don't get their own week on the Discovery Channel, which is a ripoff. But this is the idea of physically, purposefully doing less of what everyone else does as normal. So standing out by actually taking away things as opposed to matching what everyone else does. Now, here's the thing. I've already told you, you don't want to be like a zebra, because that's where 97% of people are. They're constrained by those stripes. You don't want to be like a cow, right? Because cows are oblivious. They're not doing anything to lean into what makes them different. Where you want to stay is in this pink area. It's what me and my co-author call the flaunting zone. And it's simply based on this, is that your flaws, right, the things that are inherent to you that make you different, or the things that you purposely, you might do less of, are the things that make you awesome. Or as we say in the book, these are the things that make you F.L.A.W.S.O.M. Now, a little bit of background. F.L.A.W.S.O.M ends up being an acronym as well as a portmanteau, two words put together to make one. These are the 7 different types of pink goldfish. And so we're going to spend some time here. I'm going to share 5 of the types with you. But here's the thing. If you don't believe that your flaws and imperfections actually hold the key to what makes you awesome, I'm going to ask you to consider listening to maybe one of the greatest modern philosophers of our time. And it's this gentleman right here, Bob Ross. Now, I'm so excited because I actually just picked this up today when I got my COVID vaccine. Yes, I picked up a whole thing on Bob Ross. It's the imperfections that make something beautiful. That's what makes it different and unique from everyone else. Now, here's the thing. We didn't just base it on Bob Ross. My co-author, David Rendell, and I, we went out and we looked at over 350 examples of companies that were innovating and pulling away from the competition. And what we found again is that there's roughly 7 to 8 ways that you can do this. And so I'm going to explain to you again 5 of the ways, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of the recipe for how you can innovate and create your own pink goldfish. And we're going to start with the cornerstone of the pink goldfish strategy. We call it flaunting. If you remember that flaunting zone. But this is the idea of owning who you are and what makes you different. The definition that we like is this idea of owning it, right? Parading without shame, according to Merriam-Webster's. Just owning who you are and not being afraid to put it out there. Now, trivia question again in the chat. We're going to talk about tourism in a minute. If you had to guess, though, out of the 50 US states, which state is number 50 in terms of people wanting to visit that state? Every state gets ranked. Who's number 50? Philip is coming in with Nebraska. Who else has got a guess? Tom says Iowa. You can repeat if you want. No, Ervin, come on. Everyone wants to go to Alaska, even though it may be far. Oh, Christine, are you just having a little fun? Come on, everyone wants to go to the Jersey Shore. Oregon's awesome. I used to live in Portland. People want to go there. Kansas, Ohio. Come on, Ohio's got good stuff. North Dakota. Ooh, you might have a point there. Alabama. All right, here's the deal. Philip nailed it. First guess. For 4 years in a row, Nebraska was ranked 50th of the 50 states. All right, he's saying he's got a little inside baseball. That's cool. So here's the thing. 2017, this used to be the slogan for Nebraska. Let me make that big so you can see it. Visit Nebraska, visit nice. Now, I know what you're saying. I'm booking my trip tomorrow because I need to go check out Nebraska. Well, a few years ago, they realized, hey, we're not the place that everyone wants to go to. We have to think a little bit differently. And they ended up changing this slogan. And their new slogan in 2018 became this: Nebraska, honestly, it's not for everyone. And this shocked people. This is them admitting, right, that they may not be the place that everyone wants to go. They kind of claimed it. And it became this PR and viral sensation. In fact, Stephen Colbert dedicated his entire monologue one night to the state of Nebraska. And at one point he said, "Hey, Nebraska, are you okay? Seriously?" And I love the Nebraska tourism folks because they immediately tweeted Stephen Colbert and they said, "Stephen, we are not okay because that's Oklahoma." And what they did is that they actually took the license to say, look, we're not for everyone. And then they started to come out with a campaign that really embraced what made them different. So I love this tagline: lucky for you, there's nothing to do here, right? And one of the cool things they like to do in Nebraska is that they take these irrigation livestock feed tanks, right? And they float them down this lazy river. And you can imagine this, there's probably not a lot of paddling that's going on, probably a lot of maybe a lot of coolers there in the middle, right? But it's not for everyone. But if this is what you like to do, hey, maybe Nebraska's a place that you should visit. That's the F is flaunting and F.L.A.W.S.O.M. The L is for lopsiding. Now, the lopsiding is a classic Peacocks strategy. Remember the strut quadrant? It exists way up here in the top right. This is taking what makes you weird, unique, and different, and you're just going to double and triple down on that uniqueness. Let's look at fast food for a second. Does everybody remember when this movie came out years ago? And if you're not familiar with Super Size Me, let me give you the quick 20-second. Morgan Spurlock eats McDonald's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for an entire month. And anytime someone says, do you want to supersize it? He had to say yes. And what did he learn from eating fast food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Duh. It's not good for you. And so in light of this happening, what did every restaurant do in light of Super Size Me? Well, not only did McDonald's get rid of supersizing, almost every fast food restaurant started to go healthy, right? Do you remember this? Put it in the chat. What did they start offering, right, as part of the menu when you went to a fast food restaurant, right? Salads. Tom's got salad. Yeah, what else? You could get fruit. Aravind, yeah, absolutely. You could get yogurt, right? If you wanted to, you could get water, right? You could order bottled water at a fast food restaurant. But there was one QSR that decided, instead of doing more of what everyone was doing as normal in response to this, they decided to double down on what made them unique, right? And that company was Hardee's. Now it's Carl's Jr. if you're out on the West Coast. And they took food that was fat and nasty, and what did they do? They lopsided it. They made food that was fattier and nastier. They created the great American thick burger. Check this out if you can't see. That's an entire hot dog split in half at the top. You got about a half a pound of meat, more cheese than you would need in a week. And I love this. Potato chips at the bottom, as if you're too lazy to physically pick each one up at a time. They doubled and tripled down. At the time before Super Size Me, they were closing stores. They were kind of a jack of all trades, but now they doubled and tripled down on that uniqueness. Now, my office, I'm coming to you right now from North Carolina, a place called the Research Triangle Park in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area. That's what makes the triangle. So this is a point of pride for me because North Carolina, biggest pork producing state in the entire country. This really warmed my soul when Hardee's announced a breakfast, either wrap or biscuit, called the Apocalypse. This is no part of the pig left behind, right? They say when you advertise in food, you never should use black. They violated that. As a result of Hardee's doubling and tripling down, they've actually stood out. They've innovated in these areas. They've been more successful than literally almost any other QSR during that time. And the interesting thing is 2 years ago, McDonald's actually reversed course and have went back to their roots. So that's the L for lopsiding. Let's now talk about maybe my favorite. The A in F.L.A.W.S.O.M is for antagonizing. So antagonizing is interesting. It can happen on both sides of the matrix. This is the idea of leaning in and maybe rubbing some people the wrong way by either doing more of what makes you unique or less of what everyone else considers as normal. Great example of this comes from the movie theater business. This is called the Alamo Drafthouse, right? Alamo Drafthouse started in Austin, Texas. There's now over 50 of them throughout the country, about half of which are in Texas. But Entertainment Weekly said that this is the best movie theater in all of America. Here's the thing. No one under 18 is allowed in the theater, which is interesting. And they have a very big, they're passionate about movies. When you walk into the auditorium, they have a very explicit no talking, no texting policy. And a few years ago, there was a woman that was using her phone. She was talking and texting, and she promptly got thrown out of the theater. Instead of calling up to apologize to this customer, Alamo Drafthouse decided to call someone else, and that was their lawyers. And they posed the question to their lawyers, hey, can we use this voicemail recording? And the lawyers didn't think about it for a second. They said, she knew she was being recorded. You can use it. They placed it on their blog. It went viral. And I'm going to let Anderson Cooper tell you the rest of the story.
All right. Thanks very much. I should have time now for the ridiculous. Tonight we're adding my latest source of annoyance, people who talk and text at the movies. And I want to talk about one young woman in particular, a woman who was repeatedly warned to stop texting during a movie in Austin, Texas, wouldn't stop, and was promptly thrown out of the theater. Then she left an angry voicemail for the theater, which is posted on its blog for your enjoyment.
No, that wasn't supposed to text in your little crappy theater.
All right. Did I mention that the theater is called the Alamo Drafthouse and that they serve beer? Well, I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but indeed, I think our texter may have partaken a bit, a little pre-party during the previews, perhaps. Listen to her next defense.
So excuse me for using my phone in USA, the United States of America, where you are free to text in a theater.
I love living in the United States of America, where you are free to text in a theater. Now, that's a lady who knows her Constitution. What's all that freedom jazz about if some drunk girl can't constantly update her Facebook status while people are trying to concentrate on Kung Fu Panda 2? Next, the text lady employs something I like to call the silent but deadly defense.
And it was silent. It wasn't on loud. It wasn't bothering anybody. You guys obviously were being with me.
I'm sorry, drunk girl, but texting in a dark movie theater is like lighting a road flare. People are going to see it. You might not through your beer goggles, but everyone else will. Drunk girl didn't give up, though. She's been hitting the law books, apparently, and comes up with two more arguments for her defense. A combo of the I didn't know defense, seasoned with just a touch of the I do it everywhere else defense.
I was not aware that I couldn't text in your theater, all right? I texted in all the other theaters in Austin, and no one ever gave a about what I was doing on my phone, all right?
Now, maybe she has texted her way through every other movie theater in Austin. I wouldn't be surprised, but as it turns out, this particular theater has a well-known zero tolerance policy against talking and cell phones. It's kind of this theater's crusade, and they have all kinds of creative announcements about it. Watch. Like electric cattle prod with my soul. Just if I hear someone talking, I'll give them just not an aggressive shock, but just a light shock.
My name is Pedro Sanchez from Napoleon Dynamite. If you vote for me, I'll make sure that everyone is very quiet in the theater. Don't talk during the movies. Turn off your cell phones and beepers, please.
Yeah, you can find out who they are and then go cut their tongue out.
So I think it's pretty clear where the Alamo Drafthouse stands on this issue. And you know what? Maybe a theater with that kind of policy just isn't for everyone.
You know, I will never be coming back to your Alamo Drafthouse or whatever. I'd rather go to a regular theater where people are actually polite.
Oh yeah, the regular theater are full of polite people, politely shouting at the screen, politely bringing screaming toddlers to rated R movies at 11 o'clock at night, politely talking, texting through the whole movie. The CEO of the Alamo Drafthouse says he wants his theater to be different. Here's Tim League, Great American Hero.
We wanted to take a hard stand and say that those people are not welcome at the Alamo Drafthouse. So we'll get rid of those people and just make it a better place for the rest of the movie-going public.
All right, so here's the deal. Alamo Drafthouse knows who they want, the type of customers that they want. They're not afraid to actually repel and push back those that aren't a great fit. And what we do a lot of the time is we focus all our time and energy on our target customer. Well, I think sometimes that we miss an opportunity to consider those that are in our anti-target market that we would never want to be our customer. And if we can do it in a proper way, if we can repel some, what does that do for the ones that we want? It actually creates an attraction there. And so I want you to imagine that person, even if she didn't do the viral voicemail message, imagine she's hanging out with 6 of her girlfriends that next weekend. They're having brunch, and she launches into this story about Alamo Drafthouse. I can almost guarantee you that 3 of her friends are thinking something very particular. They're probably going to ask her, oh, where is that located again? Because those people that use their phone annoy me, and I want to go to that theater. And maybe the other 3 of her friends are saying, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, everyone should be able to use their phone. Like, I'm never going to the Alamo Drafthouse. And that's what Alamo actually wants, right? Antagonizing, if you push some away, you can attract those that you really want. The 4th type is what we call withholding. This is a classic polar bear strategy. This is the idea of purposefully doing less of what others do as just the normal course of business. So I want you to imagine for a second that you're in retail, and I bet you can all guess. Type it in the, who can get the first thing here? What day of the year is this in retail? Right? Sherry's on it, Black Friday, right? You only have to look at the melee that's going on here to understand that it's Black Friday. Now, it's Black Friday because for 10.5 months, you've been in the red potentially as a retailer. This is your Super Bowl. This is your most important day of the year. So how do you innovate? How do you compete and be different when it comes to Black Friday? Well, some people might say, well, the way we can be different is that we're going to open earlier than our competition, maybe even open on Thursday as opposed to wait till Friday, right? Who cares about Thanksgiving? Or maybe the deal is, hey, we're going to do a doorbuster deal that people are going to want to come out for in droves. Or maybe the strategy is we're going to create a better overall sale program so people are going to want to shop with us. Well, there's one company that decided to do something a little bit differently. And they didn't do it by doing more of what everyone else was doing. They did it by purposely pulling back and doing less. And in 2015, REI took the step of actually closing their stores on the most important day in retail. Not only did they close 150 stores, they shut down their website during Black Friday. You couldn't even buy anything from REI on that day. Now, not only did they do that in 2015, they've now done it every Black Friday since. They've doubled and tripled down on it, creating a movement called the Opt Outside movement. And as a result of this, not only did they get tremendous PR, but their memberships went up, their sales went up, and they've benefited not by doing more, but by purposely doing less, by withholding and doing less of what everyone else considers as normal. Now, really quick, we've talked about flaunting, lopsiding, antagonizing, withholding. The S in F.L.A.W.S.O.M is swerving. And we're going to use that as an example of reviewing what we just talked about, because I'm actually going to withhold and not tell you what swerving is. And I'm going to flaunt the fact that I'm not going to tell you what it is. In fact, I hope it actually antagonizes a couple of you and maybe even pisses you off, right? Let's jump to the last one that we're going to talk about today. It's the M in F.L.A.W.S.O.M. We call it micro weirding. Now, micro weirding are small things that you do. It occupies this central part of the matrix. This is more about the experience that you provide, the little things that you do to either do more of what makes you different or less of what makes you like everyone else. So imagine you're in the hotel business. It's been a tough year plus, right, if you're in the hotel business. But let me tell you about a place called the Magic Castle Hotel. This is in Southern California. You're looking at the most reviewed hotel on all of TripAdvisor. Last time I looked, the Magic Castle had 3,500 five-star reviews, right? And the reason why they get reviewed so much is because they do a lot of little things that make them stand out. So one of the things that they do that's less than normal is that if you stay at the Magic Castle, they don't have mini bars, right? So you don't have the ability to get that overpriced soda in your room, right? But here's the deal that's a little different. If you wanted a soda or a candy bar, you simply go down to the front desk and they will actually give you a soda or candy bar for free. All right, so that's one thing that makes them different. But by far my favorite is something that they have here at their pool. Now, I think by law in Southern California, you have to have a pool, right? If you want to be relevant at least, right? But their pool has something that has a little difference. Their pool has a thing called the Popsicle Hotline. So think about it. You're sitting by the pool. You're getting a little warm. You simply walk over. You don't even have to dial. You pick up the Popsicle Hotline. You tell them what flavor you want. And literally within 2 minutes, they will walk out with a silver tray and a white glove and deliver you your popsicles poolside. Has anyone ever been disappointed because they didn't get popsicles the last time they stayed at a hotel? No, this is a little something that's weird and different, and it's memorable to people. That's the M in micro weirding, the small things that you do as part of the experience. Now, if you want to innovate, let me give you what we call, if you want to think about creating your own pink goldfish, it's a simple 4A type of process, right? 2 are about thinking differently, and then 2 are about acting differently. And the first A in this process is what we call awareness. Awareness is really looking at yourself and doing that kind of inventory to understand what makes you unique, weird, different, imperfect, flawed. So you do it by looking in the mirror. You ask your employees, you ask your customers what makes you different. But I would challenge you to even ask your suppliers and partners, because they're in a unique situation that they probably not only do business with you, but they do business with all of your competition. Now, once you've done that awareness process, that 360, you understand what makes you strong, what makes you weak. Now you're ready for the second step. And the second step is what we call acceptance. Meaning you have to wrap your arms around what makes you unique. You've got to own it. You've got to accept it. And once you've actually accepted it, and I dare say appreciate what makes you different, now you're ready to act differently. The first step for acting differently is what we call the alignment or align process. This is making sure that what your uniqueness and what you do is different is actually valued by the customers that you serve, because you want to do more of what your customers value the most and less of what they don't value. So you're also going to align that when people come to your website, they come into your office, that they see alignment in that physical space or that digital space of what makes you different. So you got to make sure that things line up. And once you do that, you're ready for the final A of what we call amplification. Now, amplification is the idea of either turning up the volume greatly or the opposite. For some things that you always do as normal, you might turn that dial all the way down, in some cases to 0, right? Be unapologetically awful at some things by doing less or none of it. But if you're going to turn up the volume, type this in the chat, what number, right? If you're going to turn up the volume, what number do you think you should take it to? What number, if you had to guess, and I'll give you a clue here, 100%, Rob says 10, 9 or 10. No one's got it right so far. 7.5. There's only one number that you want to take it to, and that's 11, right? And if you're not familiar with the concept of going up to 11, I'm going to play for you the best 52 seconds in all of cinema. And then after this, we're going to open it up to questions. But let me play this for you.
This is a talk to what we use on stage, but it's very, very special because if you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11, 11,
and most of
11.
amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it? It's not 10. You see, most blokes are going to be playing at 10. You're on 10 here, all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. You're on 10 on your guitar. Where can you go from there? Where?
I don't know.
Nowhere, exactly. What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly. One louder.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder.
These go to 11.
So you want to take it up to 11. And part of the reason why you want to do that is that people kind of discount. If you think you're taking it up to a 9 or a 10, that's not what people will feel it as. You have to actually go a little bit beyond that 10 to really show that sense of amplification. So with that, we're going to open it up to what I call questions and comments. Margaret, let me throw it over to you. What do we have as one of our first questions?
Okay, we've got a couple of things, but people can, I just want to make sure they know, go to the Q&A to type in any additional questions. All right, so first things first, most of your examples were of the B2C variety, and some of our audience members are in a B2B environment. So how can they apply innovative concepts?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. We're actually working on the 2.0 edition of the book. So there's a ton of B2B examples in there. When we wrote the book originally, just most of what we came across is more B2C. But if you think about B2B, which tends to be a little bit more conservative and not all that different, it's actually much easier to stand out and be innovative in your approach. So I think there's a challenge from being more conservative, but that also opens up an opportunity. And I'll share this as one of my favorite things. There was a company that started in Lexington, Kentucky, and they started making these huge fans for industrial use. And the name of the company was called F.L.A.W.S.O.M fans, which was an acronym for high velocity, low speed. And after a number of years, they kept getting calls saying, hey, are you the guys with the big ass fans? And so it started out with a little bit of micro weirding with a photo shoot and a postcard, but pretty soon after, they leaned in and actually embraced it, not only changed the name of their company, but really imbued that weirdness and that ethos of being innovative. So they're a great example. I always bring them up as a good B2B example. What else do we have?
All right, so going back to the beginning and the Buckley's example that you gave, what exactly was the innovation? Was it that they tasted worse, or was it that they embraced it?
Yeah, so for Buckley's, it was a little bit of more of a positioning thing of embracing what made them imperfect. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have when we think about innovating and doing stuff differently, is that we're constantly trying to create something that's perfect and checks all boxes. Whereas I think that great companies that compete and create that separation realize that they have to be great at some things at the expense of maybe exposing flaws. So for Buckley's, it was actually just embracing who they were and not being afraid to put it out there for everyone to see.
Okay, gotcha. And this one, I'm not sure if this would qualify more as comment or question, but zebra, does that sort of correlate to a commodity?
Yeah, absolutely, right? When everyone starts to measure themselves on the same things, right? And again, this is where we get to benchmarking can be so detrimental, is that we all start to look the same after an amount of time. And it's hard to break through that clutter when everyone's competing on the same things. So absolutely, that zebra place is where most people get stuck. Where you're able to expand that box and think outwards is when you're really able to innovate. Maybe one last question, because I want to get to my last story before we wrap things up?
The last question's a funny one. Have you been to Nebraska?
I have been in Nebraska. I've actually spoken in both Omaha and in Lincoln. And Nebraska is really cool. I think it gets a little bit of a bad rap. Omaha is, I think, one of the most underrated cities in the entire country. It's really got a cool flavor to it. All right, so I want to finish today and tell you a story to wrap things up about this guy right here. His name is Ashikaga Yoshimasa. He was a Japanese shogun back in the 15th century. He had a favorite tea bowl, much like you might have a favorite coffee mug that you could never replace, right? It means something to you. Well, one day he wasn't paying attention. It got knocked over. It shattered into pieces. And so he was so upset. He's like, I've got to get this fixed. He sent it out to get fixed. It came back, and whoever fixed it had used this black, coarse, ugly glue. And they actually used metal staples to put it back together. And Ashikaga, his heart sank. He said, no, that's not good enough. And he was in the Osaka region. He called in all of the best craftsmen from Osaka, and he gave them the tea bowl, and he said, you have to fix this. And they went out. It took about 2 weeks, but they meticulously took the pieces apart. They cleaned it, and then using lacquer and gold, they put it back together. And when they gave it back to Ashikaga, his heart leapt. That tea bowl that was broken and flawed was actually better now than when it was perfectly new. This became such a big thing in Japan that collectors would purposely take perfectly good pieces of pottery and smash them so they could apply the technique of what's called Kenzugi. And here's the takeaway. That tea bowl wasn't better because it was flawed. It was better because of the attention that was paid to the flaws, not to conceal them, right? But to actually shine a light on those flaws and actually bring them to life for everyone to see. So my last bit of advice to you, and I love this. This is a guy here in North Carolina, Hugh McLeod. He says, don't try to stand out from the crowd. He says, avoid crowds altogether. It's been my honor to spend some time with you. You can find me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect. I write each day under the hashtag the1299. And I'm going to throw it back to Margaret. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to spend some time with everyone.
My goodness, Stan, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I think our audience probably knows that I get a chance to see our presenters at different times in classroom setting or online, but I always learn something new from you. So I value that so much. And I think our audience, I would say, does as well. If they'd like to learn more about you, Stan, they can check out our mini MBA, Driving Innovative Business Solutions. Program start dates and other details are available on the executive education section of our website, of the business school website. And remember, if you're an RBS alumnus, to proudly indicate so on your mini MBA applications to receive a generous discount. And I want to thank our audience for enhancing the event. There was certainly a lot of participation, especially in our informal polls and, engaging in chat. And so we're grateful for that. A friendly reminder to everyone who's listening that the RBS Virtual Lunch and Learn series does take place on Wednesdays at noon Eastern. And for 2021, we've been going with the third Wednesday of the month. You can find more information on our webpage. It's long, so anyone who has registered, you will get this via email, business.rutgers.edu/alumni/lifelong-learning. Our programs are scheduled for the next several months with topics and presenters that were suggestions from our audience. So we encourage you to keep sharing those ideas with us. So this series will continue to meet your needs. So we kindly ask for you to stay on for just a moment longer. I know we ran a little bit long today, but stay on just a moment longer when today's webinar closes and complete the very brief survey about today's event. And finally, as I mentioned when our webinar began earlier, a link to the archived recording of this presentation will be shared with you via social media, emailed to those who registered, and it will also make an appearance on the Business Insights page of our website. So on behalf of Dean Lay's Lifelong Learning Team, thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your day.